Sarah Chen stared at her reflection in the Seoul apartment's bathroom mirror, her hands pressed flat against the cool glass. At 34, she looked older than her Korean colleagues, despite spending more on skincare than her monthly grocery budget. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her skin had that dull, stressed quality that no amount of concealer could hide. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd moved to Seoul 18 months ago for a tech job, expecting to find the secret to Korean women's legendary glass skin simply by living here. Instead, she'd fallen into the same patterns that had exhausted her in San Francisco. 12-hour workdays, late-night food delivery, and a skincare routine so complex it felt like a second job. Her phone buzzed with another work notification, 11:47 p.m. She reached for it automatically, then stopped, her reflection catching her eye again. Minji from her office flashed through her mind. 43 years old, luminous skin, never seemed rushed despite managing twice Sarah's workload. Yesterday, Sarah had watched Minji eat lunch with what seemed like meditation, small portions, slow bites, an actual pause between putting down her chopsticks and picking them up again. "How do you do it?" Sarah had finally asked, gesturing vaguely at Minji's face, immediately regretting the awkwardness. Minji had smiled, that serene expression Sarah had begun to associate with Korean women of a certain age. Do what? Look so rested, calm. I've tried every product in Myeongdong, but I still look like I haven't slept in years. Minji had paused, studying Sarah with gentle curiosity. Maybe it's not what you put on your skin. Maybe it's everything else. Now, standing in her bathroom past midnight, Sarah remembered the small jade roller on Minji's desk, how she'd use it during breaks while other colleagues scrolled their phones, the way Minji always brought the same glass water bottle, always warm tea, never coffee, how she'd politely declined team dinners that ran past 9, claiming she needed to prepare for sleep. Sarah opened her medicine cabinet, confronting the arsenal of serums and treatments that had promised transformation. Korean brands, American imports, Japanese innovations, all expensive, all disappointing. Below them sat a simple jade roller she'd bought on impulse but never used, too impatient for anything that didn't promise immediate results. She picked it up, surprised by its weight, its coolness. In the mirror, she looked like someone performing a ritual she didn't understand. And that felt exactly right. Everything she'd tried had been about adding more. More products, more steps, more intensity. Minji's approach seemed to be about something else entirely. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she let it. The next morning, Sarah found herself paying attention to details she'd previously missed. How Minji splashed cold water on her face in the office bathroom. How she ate her largest meal at lunch, while Sarah barely managed a convenience store sandwich. How Minji's desk stayed clear, while Sarah's accumulated coffee cups and stress-snacking wrappers. "The water," Sarah said during their afternoon break, joining Minji by the office kitchen. "You drink it warm, even when it's hot outside." Minji nodded, pouring steaming water from her thermal bottle. "Cold drinks with meals make digestion harder. Your liver works overtime, and that shows up in your skin." Sarah glanced at her own iced coffee, suddenly conscious of how it made her feel. A quick energy spike followed by an inevitable crash. "Where did you learn that?" "My grandmother. She said beauty starts in the stomach, not in a jar." That evening, Sarah found herself in a Korean traditional medicine shop, overwhelmed by unfamiliar herbs and teas. The elderly shopkeeper noticed her confusion and approached with patient curiosity. "First time?" he asked in English. Sarah nodded. "I'm looking for... I'm not sure. Something for better sleep? Better skin? My Korean colleague mentioned that beauty starts in the stomach." The man smiled, the same serene expression she'd seen on Minji. "Ah, you want to fix outside by working inside. Smart thinking." He handed her a package of dried herbs. "Fermented rice water. Make tea before sleep. Very simple, very old way." Walking home through Seoul's neon-lit streets, Sarah felt like she was carrying more than herbal tea. She was carrying a different philosophy entirely, one that suggested her reflection in the mirror wasn't a problem to attack with expensive products, but a conversation to have with her entire life. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar, and stay with us for the next chapters. The rice water tasted like disappointment. Sarah sat in her small kitchen at 9 p.m., sipping the cloudy, slightly sour liquid, while her phone glowed with Instagram stories of Korean skincare influencers promising transformation in 14 days. The herbal shop owner had said to drink it before her largest meal, but Sarah's largest meal was usually whatever she could grab between meetings. She'd tried following Minji's morning routine, cold water splash, warm tea instead of coffee, but by noon she was crashing without caffeine. Her American colleagues teased her about going native, while her Korean teammates watched her fumbling with chopsticks at lunch with polite patience. "You're eating like you're late for a flight," Minji observed gently during lunch, watching Sarah shovel rice into her mouth while checking emails on her phone. Sarah looked up, suddenly conscious of her pace. Around the table, her Korean colleagues were having actual conversations, setting down their chopsticks between bites, somehow managing to finish their meals without seeming rushed despite having the same deadline pressures. "I eat fast everywhere," Sarah admitted. "Always have." "Try this," Minji said, demonstrating a rhythm Sarah had never noticed. Chopsticks down, chew completely, small sip of warm barley tea, a moment of actual stillness before the next bite. "My mother always said the stomach needs time to tell the brain it's satisfied." That evening, Sarah attempted to recreate lunch's calmness in her apartment. She portioned rice into a small ceramic bowl. Not the oversized plates she'd grown up with, but something that fit in her cupped hands. She lit a candle, put her phone in another room, and tried to eat the way Minji had shown her. The silence felt overwhelming. Without distraction, she became hyper-aware of everything. The texture of rice, the sound of her own chewing, the way her stomach gradually felt fuller despite eating less. For the first time in years, she noticed when she'd had enough. The changes were subtle. After a week of warm water and slower meals, Sarah's mid-afternoon energy crashes became less severe. Her skin wasn't magically transformed, but the constant puffiness around her eyes had diminished slightly. More importantly, she was sleeping deeper, not longer but with a quality she hadn't experienced since college. Dr. Kim, her company's health consultant, noticed during their monthly check-in. "Your cortisol markers were elevated last month," Dr. Kim said, reviewing Sarah's latest blood work, "but your inflammatory indicators have improved. Are you doing something different?" Sarah felt embarrassed explaining her modest changes. "Just eating slower, drinking warm water, using a jade roller." Dr. Kim looked genuinely interested. "Temperature regulation affects your nervous system more than people realize. Cold drinks shock your vagus nerve, especially during meals, and the facial massage stimulates lymphatic drainage. So it's not just cultural superstition. Science often validates what cultures have practiced for centuries." Dr. Kim smiled. "Your grandmother's remedies usually have biology behind them, but maintaining these changes felt like swimming upstream." Sarah's friend Rachel, visiting from San Francisco, was baffled by the transformation of Sarah's apartment. Candles instead of overhead lighting, a low table where Sarah ate her smaller portions, blackout curtains replacing the blinds. "This is so zen," Rachel said, not entirely as a compliment. "Don't you miss normal food, normal portions? God, I could never eat off plates that small." Sarah found herself defending choices she wasn't entirely sure about. "I eat until I'm satisfied, not until I'm uncomfortable." "But don't you get hungry?" Sarah paused, realizing she'd stopped equating fullness with satisfaction. The rice bowl that had seemed restrictively small now felt perfectly proportioned. She wasn't denying herself, she was paying attention to herself. "I get hungry for meals," Sarah said slowly, But I don't get that crazy afternoon hunger anymore, or the late-night kitchen raids. Rachel shook her head. I need real food to function. This whole tiny portion thing would make me obsess about food all day. That night, after Rachel left for her hotel, Sarah sat in her dimmed apartment with her evening rice water, thinking about the conversation. She wasn't obsessing about food. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about food constantly. Without the blood sugar crashes from cold drinks and rushed eating, without the afternoon energy plummets, she'd found a steadiness she hadn't known was possible. She picked up her jade roller, feeling its familiar coolness, and began the gentle massage Minji had taught her. Not as punishment for her face's imperfections, but as a daily conversation with her own nervous system. A way of saying, through small actions, that she was worth slowing down for. The test came during Seoul's infamous work culture pressure cooker, year-end project deadlines. Sarah's American instinct screamed for survival mode. Skip meals, chug coffee, work until midnight, crash into bed with takeout containers. Instead, she found herself in uncharted territory, maintaining her evening rice water ritual even when the office demanded 14-hour days. "You're leaving at 9 again?" her manager asked, not quite accusingly, but close. Sarah nodded, gathering her bag while colleagues settled in for another late-night sprint. "I need to maintain my sleep schedule." 3 months ago, she would have stayed, fueled by guilt and caffeine. Now, watching Minji also pack up at her usual time, Sarah felt anchored to a different rhythm. Minji never seemed frantic, despite completing more work than anyone. Never seemed guilty about protecting her boundaries. "How do you do it?" Sarah asked Minji in the elevator. "The deadlines are the same, but you never seem panicked," Minji finished. "My grandmother used to say that rushing through life makes you arrive at death faster." At home, Sarah's rice water routine felt like stepping into a different world. The familiar ceramic cup, the slightly sour taste, the 10 minutes of stillness before bed. These small rituals had become her bridge between the office's intensity and actual rest. Her phone buzzed with anxious messages from colleagues still working, but Sarah was experimenting with something Minji had mentioned: complete darkness for exactly 8 hours. No phone checking, no hall light bleeding in. Just silk pillowcase against her skin and the trust that her body knew how to repair itself. The results showed up first in her energy levels, then in her lab work. "This is remarkable, Doctor," Kim said during their follow-up appointment, spreading Sarah's latest blood tests across her desk. "Your inflammatory markers are in optimal range. Sleep quality indicators suggest you're getting genuine deep sleep, and your cortisol rhythm has normalized completely." Sarah stared at the numbers, concrete validation that her small changes were creating measurable differences. "My skin's been clearing up too. People keep asking if I had work done." "Consistent sleep in complete darkness optimizes melatonin production," Dr. Kim explained. "That hormone doesn't just regulate sleep. It's your body's most powerful antioxidant. Combined with stress reduction from slower eating and nervous system regulation from temperature management. It sounds too simple. The most effective interventions usually are. But simple doesn't mean easy in your culture." Dr. Kim was right. Simple felt revolutionary. Sarah's mother, visiting from California, was confused by her daughter's transformed apartment. Floor seating, smaller plates, candles instead of overhead lighting. "Honey, this is lovely, but where are your real dishes? And why is everything so dark?" Sarah demonstrated her evening routine, the rice water preparation, the jade roller massage, the gentle transition to complete darkness. Her mother watched with the expression of someone observing an elaborate performance. "It's just so much work, all this ritual. When I was your age, I washed my face with soap and went to bed. We didn't need all these complicated routines." "But you were exhausted all the time," Sarah said gently, remembering her mother's chronic fatigue, the stress eating, the way she'd aged rapidly during Sarah's teenage years. Her mother paused. Well, that was just life. Stress is normal. But what if it doesn't have to be? That conversation echoed as Sarah maintained her practices through holiday travel, family gatherings, and the constant pressure to just have one drink or just stay up late this once. Each small choice, warm water instead of cocktails, early bedtime instead of late-night socializing, felt like choosing a different identity. Rachel called from San Francisco, complaining about post-holiday exhaustion. I gained 8 pounds and haven't slept properly in weeks. I keep thinking about your weird little rice bowl life. Does that stuff actually work, or are you just convincing yourself? Sarah looked around her Seoul apartment, the jade roller on her nightstand, the thermal bottle that kept her water perfectly warm, the blackout curtains that had become essential for deep sleep. 6 months ago, these changes would have felt like deprivation. Now they felt like care. My skin's clearer than it's been in years, Sarah said. I sleep through the night, I don't get hangry, I don't crash at 3 p.m. anymore. But don't you feel restricted? All those rules? Sarah considered this, sipping her evening rice water from the ceramic cup that had become as essential as coffee once was. I feel more free, actually. Free from constantly being tired. Free from fighting my own body. God, you sound like a wellness guru, Rachel laughed. But there was something else in her voice. Curiosity. Envy. I sound like someone who finally figured out that my grandmother's medicine cabinet was actually my nervous system. Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The promotion offer came with a catch, relocating back to San Francisco, leaving Seoul and the quiet rhythms that had become her foundation. Sarah stared at the email in her office, watching Minji through the glass partition. Her colleague was performing her afternoon ritual, jade roller massage, warm tea, 5 minutes of complete stillness between projects. These practices that had once seemed strange now felt like essential infrastructure for sanity. Congratulations, Minji said when Sarah shared the news, but you look worried. I'm scared I'll lose everything I've learned here, Sarah admitted. In San Francisco, people eat at their desks, stay up until midnight scrolling, drink iced everything. How do I maintain rice water and silk pillowcases in a culture that sees self-care as weakness? Minji smiled with understanding. Culture is strong, but personal environment is stronger. You don't abandon the practices, you adapt them. That evening, Sarah called her mother with the news. A promotion, that's wonderful, honey, and you can finally get back to normal eating and normal schedules. Normal. The word hit Sarah like cold water. Normal meant constant exhaustion disguised as productivity. Normal meant aging rapidly under fluorescent lights. Normal meant treating her body like an inconvenient machine that occasionally broke down. What if I don't want normal? Sarah asked. What do you mean? Sarah looked around her Seoul apartment, the low table where she ate mindful meals, the ceramic rice bowl that had retrained her relationship with portions, the blackout curtains that had transformed her sleep. These weren't Korean habits she'd adopted as cultural cosplay. They were technologies for nervous system regulation that happened to be embedded in Korean wisdom. I mean, what if normal is why I was exhausted and sick? What if I need to create abnormal? The conversation with her San Francisco employer was revealing. When Sarah mentioned she'd need blackout curtains in her office for better sleep quality, HR looked confused. When she asked about kitchen facilities for preparing herbal tea, they pointed to the coffee machine and energy drink fridge. We're pretty fast-paced here, her future manager explained. Lots of working lunches, late-night pushes. I hope the slower Korean work culture hasn't made you soft. Sarah almost laughed. Korean work culture wasn't slower, it was more sustainable. Minji accomplished more in focused 8-hour days than Sarah's American colleagues managed in 12-hour caffeine marathons. The difference wasn't intensity, it was relationship with recovery. "I'll need to maintain some specific health practices," Sarah said carefully. "Nothing that affects work quality, but essential for my optimal performance." Doctor. Kim gave Sarah a final consultation before her departure, reviewing her transformed health markers with satisfaction. "Your inflammatory markers are now optimal. Sleep architecture is excellent. Stress hormones are in healthy ranges," Dr. Kim said. "The question is whether you can maintain this nervous system regulation in an environment designed to dysregulate it." "What do you mean?" "San Francisco's work culture, food culture, social culture, they're built around sympathetic nervous system activation, fight or flight as default mode. You've spent months training your parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest mode. That's why your health transformed." Sarah understood viscerally. In Seoul, she'd learned to befriend her own biology instead of overriding it. The rice water wasn't magical. It was a daily practice of internal awareness. The jade roller wasn't vanity. It was nervous system communication. The darkness wasn't deprivation. It was hormonal optimization. So, how do I protect this in a culture that thinks self-care is selfish? "You remember that culture is just collective habits," Dr. Kim said, "and habits are just repeated environments. You create your own environment, one choice at a time." Sarah's going-away dinner with Minji was quiet, both women understanding the weight of transition. "Promise me something," Minji said, pressing a wrapped gift into Sarah's hands. "Don't let them convince you that exhaustion is normal just because it's common." At home, Sarah unwrapped the gift, a ceramic cup identical to the one she'd used for months of evening rice water ritual, simple, perfectly weighted, holding exactly the right amount. Not a souvenir, but a tool, a daily reminder that she could choose differently. Packing her Seoul apartment, Sarah realized she wasn't just moving cities. She was carrying an invisible architecture, the knowledge that her body responded better to warmth than cold, to darkness than artificial light, to stillness than constant stimulation. These weren't Korean secrets. They were human requirements that Korean culture happened to honor. Her last night in Seoul, Sarah performed her rituals with extra attention. The rice water in her familiar cup, the jade roller's cool weight against her skin, the silk pillowcase, the complete darkness. Tomorrow, she'd rebuild this environment 8,000 miles away, but tonight she was grateful for the country that had taught her to listen to her own nervous system. 6 months back in San Francisco, Sarah discovered the secret wasn't about discipline, it was about architecture. Her apartment looked nothing like Seoul, but it functioned the same way. Blackout curtains in every room, a low table for mindful meals. The ceramic cup from Minji positioned exactly where she'd see it each evening, triggering her rice water ritual without willpower or memory. The real revelation came during a company health screening when Dr. Martinez reviewed her lab results with barely concealed amazement. "These numbers don't match your address," he said, scrolling through Sarah's blood work on his tablet. "Inflammatory markers this low, sleep quality this high, stress hormones this regulated. I usually see this in people living completely different lifestyles." "What kind of lifestyle?" "The kind that doesn't exist in Silicon Valley. Whatever you're doing, it's working against everything your environment is designed to create." That's when Sarah understood. She wasn't Korean, but she'd learned to architect her personal environment like someone who understood nervous system biology. Her apartment was a Seoul island in a San Francisco ocean, every detail deliberately designed to support rest instead of stimulation. Her colleague Jennifer noticed during their quarterly review, "You're different since you came back, calmer, more focused. Are you on some kind of medication?" Sarah almost laughed. "I drink rice water before bed and eat from small bowls." "That's it? No supplements? No special diet?" "The bowl is the diet," Sarah realized as she said it. "The ritual is the supplement." This was the secret hidden in plain sight. Her grandmother's ceramic cup wasn't about tea, it was about creating a daily transition between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system states. The jade roller wasn't about skincare, it was about vagus nerve stimulation. The darkness wasn't about sleep, it was about hormonal optimization. Korean women hadn't taught her skincare. They'd taught her nervous system regulation, disguised as cultural tradition. Rachel visited that weekend, immediately noting the apartment's unusual setup. "This is still so weird," she said, gesturing at Sarah's low table and small dishes. "But you look, I don't know, like you're not fighting a war anymore." "I'm not," Sarah said, pouring warm water for both of them. "I was fighting my own biology for 34 years. "What do you mean?" Sarah demonstrated her evening routine: the rice water preparation, the jade roller massage, the gradual dimming of lights. "Watch your nervous system," she said. "Feel how your shoulders drop when the lights get softer, how your breathing deepens when you slow down the roller movement." Rachel's face changed as she experienced it. "Oh, it's like meditation without trying to meditate." "It's better," Sarah said. "It's environmental medicine. Instead of forcing my mind to be calm, I'm creating conditions where calm is easier than chaos." The next Monday brought Sarah's biggest test, a startup acquisition requiring 6 weeks of 18-hour days. Her old self would have abandoned all routines, lived on coffee and takeout, crashed completely. Instead, Sarah became an experiment in sustainable intensity. She brought her thermal bottle to late-night meetings, sipping warm water while colleagues pounded energy drinks. She ate lunch from her small ceramic bowl at her desk, taking actual breaks between bites while others multitasked through sandwiches. "You're going to burn out eating that slowly," her manager warned during a particularly stressful week. "I'm going to burn out faster if I don't," Sarah replied calmly, continuing her methodical pace. The acquisition closed successfully, but more importantly, Sarah emerged energized rather than depleted. Her colleagues looked grey and exhausted, requiring weeks of recovery. Sarah looked like herself. Dr. Martinez called personally about her follow-up blood work. "I've never seen someone maintain these health markers through that kind of work stress. Your cortisol rhythm stayed completely stable. How is that possible?" "I changed my relationship with my nervous system," Sarah said. "Instead of overriding it, I learned to regulate it." That evening, Sarah sat with her rice water and jade roller, understanding finally what Minji had meant about culture versus environment. She hadn't adopted Korean habits, she'd adopted Korean wisdom about working with human biology instead of against it. The ceramic cup felt perfectly familiar in her hands, the weight of months of ritual. Not discipline, but design. Not willpower, but architecture. Not perfection, but partnership with her own nervous system. In the mirror, as she completed her evening massage, Sarah saw someone who looked fundamentally different, not because of skincare products, but because of nervous system care. Glass skin wasn't about genetics or expensive treatments. It was about daily practices that honored the body's natural rhythms instead of fighting them. The secret had been hiding in her grandmother's medicine cabinet all along. 2 years later, Sarah's annual physical revealed the long-term implications of her quiet rebellion against modern life. "Your biological age tests 12 years younger than your chronological age," Dr. Martinez announced, reviewing comprehensive biomarker panels. "Your sleep architecture, inflammatory markers, and stress response patterns match someone in their early 20s. I'm sending these results to colleagues. They won't believe this is possible in Silicon Valley." Sarah smiled, thinking of the ceramic cup on her kitchen counter, the jade roller that had become as essential as her toothbrush, the blackout curtains that neighbors thought were excessive. Small tools, profound architecture. Her mother visited that month, finally understanding what Sarah had created. "You move differently," her mother observed, watching Sarah prepare their evening meal with methodical calm. Like you have all the time in the world. I do, Sarah said, serving rice into two small bowls, her familiar ceramic one and a new one she'd found for guests. When you stop rushing your nervous system, time expands. Her mother tried eating at Sarah's pace, small bites, chopsticks down between mouthfuls, actual conversation instead of distracted consumption. This is peaceful, she admitted. I can't remember the last time I tasted my food. Most people can't, Sarah said. We eat to fuel productivity instead of nourish biology, Rachel called that evening, as she did monthly now, seeking advice for her own health struggles. My doctor wants to put me on sleep medication, she said. But I keep thinking about your rice water thing. Does it really work, or was that just placebo? Come visit, Sarah offered. Experience it yourself. Rachel arrived exhausted from her flight, wired from airport coffee, skin showing the telltale signs of chronic stress. Sarah didn't lecture, she simply created the environment. Warm water instead of ice, dinner from small bowls at the low table, candles instead of overhead lighting, the jade roller demonstration that had become second nature, early transition to complete darkness. I haven't slept like that in years, Rachel admitted the next morning, looking genuinely rested. What did you do to me? I stopped shocking your nervous system, Sarah explained. Cold drinks, bright lights, rushed eating, screen stimulation. It's all sympathetic nervous system activation, fight or flight mode. Your body thinks it's being chased by tigers 20 hours a day. Rachel studied Sarah's apartment with new eyes. Every detail designed for parasympathetic activation, rest and digest mode. This isn't about skincare at all, is it? It's about nervous system care, Sarah confirmed. Skincare just happens when you stop poisoning your stress response with modern life. 6 months later, Rachel moved to San Francisco and asked Sarah to help design her apartment. Then Jennifer from work. Then Sarah's cousin visiting from Chicago. Each person, initially skeptical, eventually converted not by argument, but by experience. Sarah found herself accidentally teaching what Minji had once taught her, that wellness wasn't about adding complicated routines, but about subtracting nervous system stressors and replacing them with regulatory practices so simple they felt almost insulting. Minji visited during a business trip to San Francisco, delighted to see Sarah's adaptation of their shared principles. You've become the teacher now, Minji observed, noting Sarah's natural authority around these practices. I'm just sharing what worked, Sarah said, preparing rice water in her familiar ceramic cup, the anchor that had held steady through 2 years of cultural transition. That's how traditions survive, Minji smiled. Someone experiences transformation, then creates conditions for others to experience it too. That evening, alone in her apartment, Sarah performed her ritual with the awareness that it had transcended personal habit and become something larger. Proof that individual environment could override collective culture. In the mirror, completing her jade roller massage, she saw someone who had aged backward while living in a culture designed to accelerate aging, not through expensive interventions or extreme discipline, but through daily partnership with her own biology. The ceramic cup sat empty on her nightstand, ready for tomorrow's ritual. Such a simple object, holding such profound results. Not because it was magical, but because it was consistent. A daily vote for nervous system regulation in a world designed for nervous system chaos. Korean women hadn't given Sarah beauty secrets. They'd given her something far more valuable. The knowledge that glass skin was just the visible evidence of internal glass, a nervous system so clear and regulated that it reflected health outward like light through crystal. Small bowl, small ritual, small daily choices. But compound over time, they had created a completely different life, not just longer or healthier, but fundamentally calmer. A life where the body was partner, not battlefield. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes. Subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.